bheke ukuthi kambe ivote ingasebenza yini njengenhlanganiso ezimele yedwa yini laphana yini into ekhona ebantwini abaningi bekhuluma kuma-WhatsApp la bekhuluma kuma-Facebook bekhuluma kuma-Twitter uyabona kanti ke imibuzo yonke njengoba ngitshilo ihamba iqonda endodeni inye kwesinye isikhathi yazi yathi hayi-ke akuthi abantu mbabize ngithi kasihlaleni phansi sikhulumisane kanti ke sidinga amadoda ayenelisa ukuthi angakhulumisana ngale ndaba sibone futhi wena usilandele mdlalo wami omuhle ku-WhatsApp sikhona ku-Facebook sikhona we're streaming live ku-Twitter at Skies Metro FM and then njengoba sitshilo ukuthi we are live on Facebook laphana and then uyakhona ukuthi usilandele futhi sithi #2018 elections and then #Zim decides 2018 again sikhona ku-Smallcast Lebriz FM laphana eku-91.2 nxa use-Vix Falls and Victoria Falls and the surrounding areas sikhona laphana kanti today angihambi ngedwa ngiyabe ngilo Violet Gonda nguyozabe khona lapha as the host nguye obuza yonke imibuzo and then you are welcome to use i-WhatsApp platform here, to use our Facebook platform for all your questions. And then ku-Twitter we are there and then at the same time angazi nxa kusiya ngesikhathi sisivumela sathola ne-VTuber we will allow you to call in libuze imibuzo yenu and maybe lifake your comments there kanti ke i-WhatsApp platform yethu our number is 0774 460 100 0774 460 that's our WhatsApp number. And then, as I've said earlier on, Mlalelo Mamuhle, Sehamba Laphana, my dear listener, we have Mr. David Colt from the MDC Alliance. Today is in here, MLA, EMDC Alliance Laphana. He's a Zimbabwean lawyer, a Christian leader, a politician, and founding member of the MDC Singapore Laphana. He was also MP for Bulawayo South in the House of Assembly Laphana from 2000 2008. He's also a former minister for education, sport, arts and culture from February 2009 to around August 2013. And then we've got the commissioner, Dr. Qhubani Moyo, who is a ZEC commissioner and very vocally ekhulumela uyabona i-ZEC zama kunika abantu put people kulight yokumele bayibambe eyo eliqiniso elihamba likhulunywa ngabe-ZEC laphana and he's also the CEO of Fair Talk Communications, Skies Metro and Breeze FM. He's also a scholar of note and a politician in his own right. And today, as I said earlier on, Violet Gonda, welcome to Skies Metro FM today. And then we are going to ukhulumela abalaleli and ukhulumela abo. First you need to say salibonani.
Salibonani.
You're welcome. You can take it up.
Thank you, Denson. Hello and welcome to the program Making Elections Make Sense, the election dialogue series sponsored by the Zimbabwe Election Support Network in partnership with myself, Violet Gonda. We are in Bulawayo today for a live radio debate with ZEC Commissioner Qhubani Moyo and MDC Alliance David Colt. And before I start, I'd like to apologize to our listeners out there. I have a terrible cold, but I hope that you can hear me quite clearly there. I'll go straight into it because Denson has already given us a good introduction. Let me start with David Coltard. You have been complaining a lot as the NDC Alliance, as the opposition, in terms of ZEC and also some of the issues you've seen with the ballot papers or even with the voters' roll. What do you perceive as ZEC's breaches?
Salibonani. It's good to be here this evening. Our concern is that we've seen serial breaches of the Constitution, of the Electoral Act, of the electoral regulations by ZEC and even by some of its commissioners. If we go right the way back to as far as February this year, we saw just days after the current chair was sworn in as chairperson, she breached Section 11.3c of the Electoral Act, which says no commissioner will knowingly wear any article of clothing that is reasonably likely to be associated with a political party or candidate contesting any election. That is a serious violation right at the start of her role as chair, and it has continued ever since then. They were meant to provide political parties with a copy of the voters' roll prior to nomination day in terms of Section 21.4. They failed to do that. We have seen, for example, last week with the postal ballot, serious violations committed breaching Section 74 and 75 That is meant to be a secret ballot signed by police officers. It is not meant to be sent to commanding officers, and yet these policemen were corralled because of the actions of ZEC in sending all of these ballot papers back to the police and requiring that they be sent back to ZEC, a violation of Section 74, 75. Then we've got the breach of Section 57 of the Act, as read with the regulations in the formulation of the ballot, something that the Commissioner herself, I understand, admitted was a breach of the Act and regulations, and she simply says, well, it's water under the bridge. But this is a violation of the electoral law. And so the list goes on. We have, for example, the breach of their obligations in terms of Section 160 of the Act, which requires, in terms of Section 160K, it says the Commission shall monitor Zimbabwe news media during any election period to ensure that political parties, broadcasters, print publishers observe the provisions of this part, which is, and this part is the provision that says that all media must be impartial, must be factual in their reporting, inaccuracies in reports should be rectified without delay, and yet ZEC has been absolutely silent about this. We've seen no public statements condemning the ZEC's bias, the propaganda sheets of the Herald and the Chronicle, both state-owned media. And that's why I say ZEC has committed not just one violation, serial violations. And now we have finally, before I hand over to Dr. Moyo, I'm sure he wants to respond, this publication of the report yesterday of the biometric voters' roll analysis, which indicates that there are serious violations, serious inaccuracies in the voters' roll. And finally, of course, we've got this whole issue regarding the opaqueness, regarding the printing of the ballot. And quite frankly, we have completely lost confidence, certainly in the chair and in ZEC as an institution, because, as I pointed out now, there have been these repeated breaches of the Constitution, of the electoral law by ZEC.
Okay, Dr. Moyo, what can you say about all these, quite a lot of violations that Mr. Colt has talked about? He mentioned Scarfgate, no voters' roll given to the political parties, the issue of the ballot papers, and also the inaccuracies in the voters' roll, among other issues. What can you say about it? Maybe if we can just give us for each issue that he has brought up. Let's start with Scarfgate.
Thank you very much, Viola. Being the issue of this so-called scarfgate, where our chairperson is seen to have been wearing a scarf that is Zimbabwean colors, which is now generally associated with the campaign of ZANU-PF. When that came up in the public media, some of us knew very, very well that it was people playing mind games, and I did tease people that, look, this is an issue of Photoshop. But she has really come out and explained herself that that was taken before she was actually, sworn in to be chairperson of the commission. Look, I'm not a lawyer myself, but I have a recollection of certain, provisions of the constitution of the country or electoral act. That if you are, in association with any political institution when you are appointed, you could, recuse, you easily have a timeline in which you come out and dissociate yourself from that particular provision. But in the case of the chairperson, she was very clear that there are people that came out and said that we were trying to build a national consciousness, which national consciousness can be built by making sure that Zimbabwe is identified with national colors, national scarf, and that has nothing to do with the political party that the scarf is now associated with. These are Zimbabwean colors, and that has been well defined. I want to quickly move on.
Sorry, on that issue, you had originally rubbished it on social media as Photoshop, as you mentioned. So do you now agree that you were wrong, and are you willing to apologize for that?
No,
so it was such a big issue on social media
look,
at the time.
The issue that the people that throw it into social media were quite aware, very clearly, that the chairperson herself was wearing that scarf before she even became a commissioner of ZEC, and the same people that throw it into the public media are the same people that came out again and said, look, this scarf was worn at a certain date before she became a commissioner. She has clarified that. These people were playing mind games, and because they were playing mind games, I played them 20 people. There's nothing to apologize about.
But I don't really want to go too much in detail on this issue because it's not as important as all the other issues that really concern Zimbabwe. But on the issue of her saying that she wore it before she became commissioner, it has been proven again on social media that she wore it after she became
No,
commissioner.
I think what has been proven so far is that it was posted after she became commissioner. There is no proof that she wore it before she became commission.
Okay.
But there are also a number of issues that are raised that are of substance that I want to talk about, which is the issue of the voters' roll. We have had so many issues regarding the issue of the voters' roll, where the accusations that the voters' roll is shambolic, that the voters' roll is over a 250,000 people that costs, that you have many duplications. Which is untrue, because that voters' roll, we have gone through it ourselves, and we are satisfied that whatever accusation is there is untrue. We have a situation where you have many people that have similar names, many people that have similar dates of death, many people that have similar places of birth, but there is no one in the voters' roll that has a similar identification number. You may have people that might have an ID number that looks similar in terms of the first figures, but if you had to really look into it closely, you find that there is none that has a similar ID number. The actual way of proving factual position of interest into the voters' roll is to use the ID numbers and also use the biofeatures, which is the fingerprints of the people that have applied to be in the voters' roll. When you look at now, none of those happen. We've seen in social media some reports about certain individuals that have done their audit about the voters' roll, and we have really gone through it and satisfied ourselves that whatever voters' roll that we are using is not the actual voters' roll that the Commission has, because the Commission has a voters' roll that has been run through a fingerprint identification system, which throws out anything that is, any repetition. For instance, I will tell you that our voters' roll itself has 92,000 or so people that we excluded from the list. Of those 92,000, I will pick a few issues. That we had about 11,000 or so people that had invalid identification. They are thrown out of voters' roll because our software managed to push them out. Then we also unearthed about 1,500 or so people that had similar IDs, which we took with RG's office and we threw those people out. We also had about 8,000 or so people that were deceased. We identified those and we threw that out. So we are satisfied that in its current form, the voters' roll does not have any people of similar IP numbers or any people that are sharing any identifications.
Okay, so I know we're going to go to a break right now, but I think let's just get Mr. Colt out to respond to these issues about the voters' roll. We've heard the opposition saying there are 250,000 ghost voters, there are 76,000 people on the voters' roll who have unique surnames. So what can you say based on what Mr. Dr. Moyo has just said about the voters' roll?
Thanks, Violet, and thanks, Dr. Moyo. The first point I'd make is Dr. Moyo has just said that the voters' roll that civil society has analysed is different to the ZEC voters' roll. I mean, that is absolutely astounding to me, that we have been given a voters' roll which is different to the one that ZEC has. But the fact is that we have been through, when I say we, a team of 7 highly qualified computer experts, not aligned to any political party, has gone through the voters' roll that we have. And they have picked out serious anomalies. Let me give you one example. They have picked out, it's on page 30 and page 31 of the report, they have identified in this voters' roll that there are 76,000 surnames that are unique to one person. In other words, those voters don't have a father, don't have a mother, don't have a daughter, don't have a sister, don't have a brother, don't have an auntie or an uncle with the same surname. How can that be in our country? And if you look at the examples that they've pulled out, they're not even mistakes. They're not names that have a double T, for example. These appear to be totally unusual surnames in this voters' roll. How can that be? And Dr. Moyo says they've got rid of all the duplications. Well, this report shows that there are still numerous duplications in this roll. Let me touch on one other thing, and it goes to the very core of this process. Dr. Moyo has spoken about a fingerprint identification system that ZEC has, and we know that it's called APHIS. I understand that that's the name of the software. It was purchased at a lot of expense to the Zimbabwean taxpayer. And what it does, it can analyze the 5.6 million fingerprints to indicate where the duplications are. Now, you'll appreciate that it's easy to manufacture a surname. It is easy to manufacture an ID. It is easy to manufacture an address. It is also possible to make mistakes in data entry in all of those. But it is absolutely impossible to duplicate a fingerprint. That is why the key test is the fingerprint duplication process. Now, ZEC says that they've done it, but they haven't invited any independent people to verify that they've done it. They haven't produced the report. As you know, when these computer software systems are run, they produce a report. They say that we have found X thousand of duplications. We have never seen that report. There's all this opaqueness going around, and it's the easiest thing in the world for ZEC to get independent people in, to analyze the process that was run, this AFS process, and to see the report. There's no possible invasion of voters' privacy because you're dealing with 5.6 million fingerprints, and you're just dealing with a computer report that says there were X number of duplications.
Dr. Moyo, why hasn't this report been made public?
The report is available at the Commission. The Commission made it very clear when it was certifying the people of Zimbabwe that their details are going to be kept at the Commission. We have not reached that element of privacy for the people of Zimbabwe. What we have done is to follow the Constitution in terms of provision of the list of people registered in analysis to form to the political parties that are contesting including all the individuals. The allegations that have been made from a report that has not yet been sent to the Commission that Senator Colt is using are very, very difficult to really trace, because he claimed that they made their own analysis as a team of lawyers and experts in computers. They have not sent that report to us. We have not really gone through it, and therefore I think it becomes really difficult for me or anyone to really argue on the basis of a report that I have not gone through. Suffice to say that from what I've seen being thrown on social media, I think the reports that they are using are not reports that can be relied on. There could be reports that are based on information that was sourced from probably the sources that are unreliable before we had even gone through the process of verification of the whole registration process using AFIS, because we have satisfied ourselves. We have gone through the whole process and checked what people were alleging when there was a report made that there are 250,000 voters. We have a few entries that we saw, for instance, that some people were born 1877 and so on, 2 or 3 of them that we verified using ID numbers. And then we satisfied ourselves that it was an error that was correctable. But a claim that there are 250,000 people on the voters' roll that are ghosts is not factually true. In fact, it is very alarmist, and Zimbabweans should be encouraged to take it with a pinch of salt. What I would want to request from Dave and his team is that if they've had, the proper voters roll and analyzed and got the figures that they claim, then they are free to send it to us for purposes of verification. But for us to go out and give people's fingerprints to any individual, we are not going to do that. We stand firm in terms of our commitment to keep the privacy of the details of the Zimbabweans that in fact were actually not sure or that they should register with the commission because of the fear that their fingerprints could be used abusively by elements that were not necessarily keen to use them for registration.
How about bringing in an independent body to audit the voters' roll, since there's so much, the opposition is not happy with what's been happening?
There is no requirement in terms of our law to do that kind of audit. But actually, let's also look at it this way. That is, this country is 55 political parties, and this country has 23 presidential candidates. Amongst those presidential candidates that we have include a professor of law, Madu, and others, that they have said let the commission do its job appropriately without any hindrance, without any interference. When we speak about independence of the commission, we speak of independence from the ruling party and independence from also from the opposition. What we are seeing right now are attempts by the opposition, which Dave belongs to try and micromanage the commission, to try and use the crowds to abuse the commission, to try and bring crowds to come and try to harass the commission. The commission stands firmly in terms of doing its job on the basis of the provision of the independence provided for in terms of the law. And the commission can only be accommodative to the issues that are realistically acceptable. But those issues that Dave and his team want are issues that they tried to push through the parliament and they failed. They spent so much time trying to push the parliament to change legislation and they did not do it. Now what they're trying to do is to try and bring things that they failed to change in parliament via the back door. May I encourage Dave and his team that in future they must take opportunity in parliament to ensure that they change the laws appropriately, and then we'll change them accordingly.
Debate, am I going to be given the opportunity to respond?
Yes, go for it. Let's hear you.
Thank you. Firstly, Violet, as you've heard tonight, I haven't raised anything that isn't already in our law. And this thing about there's no obligation for them to reveal stuff is in flat contradiction to the provision of Section 239A of the Constitution, which says that elections must be conducted in a transparent way and in accordance with the law. And one would think that, given the centrality of the voters' roll, that when issues like this are raised, and it is central to our democracy, we do not want privacy to be affected. We're simply saying that in accordance with their obligation to be transparent, in accordance with their Constitution and Electoral Act obligation to provide us with the voters' roll, it is important that they provide us with this full BVR voters' roll.
we have always sought to protect the privacy of people. And as I said in my remarks just now, we're not saying that people's fingerprints should be revealed. We're simply saying they've got the computer software, which they've kept very close to their chest regarding these duplications. We've heard now, tonight, for the first time, I believe, that that report can be made available. Why haven't they made that report available prior to this? The other thing about this is that apparently it takes 3 weeks to run the system. So it's far too late now, even if the opposition were given the BVR. But ZEC has an obligation to be independent and transparent and to build confidence of the public in a public institution. And they've done just the opposite.
What about on the issue of an independent audit? You heard what he said.
Well, he's correct in saying that there is no provision in our law for an independent audit. I don't dispute that. We're not arguing for anything beyond that. But in their duty to supply us with the voters' roll, they are obliged to supply us with the complete voters' roll. We do not have the BVR aspect so that we can do our own checks on these fingerprint duplications.
But you are talking about privacy of the voters. And you see, the report that Dev is carrying here, that they are saying they used to analyze the voters' roll wherever they got it. Look, there's a contradiction here, Dev. You've got the voters' roll, but you are saying that you and the group of lawyers and experts used to analyze the voters' roll. At the same time, you are saying you don't have the voters' roll. I think you note your contradiction. But
we've got part of the voters' roll.
But also, Dev, you see, you are saying you are committed to the privacy of citizens, and the analysis that you are carrying there is an analysis that is thrown all over internet, including people's names, including people's proof of residence, including people's ID numbers. That on its own is a breach of the privacy of private
if we're talking about privacy, let's talk about Zanu's access to the voters' and telephone number.
Let me finish. I'm saying that, Dev, you and your team, you have gone on to throw into the public arena, social media, your report and names of people, ID numbers, and so on and so forth. That on its own just shows that you guys can be trusted if you're given certain documents. And then finally, I want to make it known that as a commission, we made a commitment that we are going to hold information of Zimbabweans in a manner and way that it won't be abused. We want it known, Dev, that there's a difference between transparency and nakedness. What the commission is doing in the interest of national security and interest is to ensure that while we provide the public with information so that we're transparent, would never be naked. We have a duty defined in terms of the Constitution as was adopted by Zimbabweans, and we have the Electoral Act that we follow to protect all Zimbabweans, including the vulnerable Zimbabweans and also the weak Zimbabweans that have no voice. Okay. I have no doubt that
we need to move on.
I need to be able to respond to that as well, because the greatest breach of privacy in relation to the voters' roll has actually been committed by ZANU-PF, which ZEC has been totally silent about. ZANU-PF, as we know, curiously has managed to get access to this unique combination of people's cell phone numbers and wards where they voted. And that party has abused the privacy of Zimbabweans far more than any other party. And yet we hear ZEC absolutely silent about this.
No, ZEC has made a position regarding.
Well, they've argued that they haven't given the data. But there's the logical place where it has come from.
No,
has been from the ZEC database.
ZANU-PF has pronounced itself through their legal secretary Mangwana that they were using names of people from their own database of members and from the database of potential members. So if there are people that are in the ZANU-PF database, they receive those messages. And if there are people that are potentially one way or the other that have been, spoken to by ZANU and kept their numbers, they say they, got those messages. But one thing for sure is that we know of many people as well that are not necessarily registered as voters that have received, those messages from ZANU-PF, and we can't be blamed for that. But I also know that there are also possibilities that there are people that do telemarketing, that have sent us various campaigns, that get our numbers from databases of service providers, and they keep them. And it's possible that they could have also been the ones that liaised with ZANU-PF, who then could have used them to zone and see who stays where. ZEC is not responsible for this one, and they clearly want
we got that.
Sorry,
Just
I have to
quickly,
respond
just
to
quickly
this
on that,
very,
because
very
we
quickly.
need to move on to other topics.
The irony for me is that Dr. Moyo, in his comments, reveals his bias. Because the only political party which has violated the privacy of people is ZANU-PF. He immediately accepts their explanation, and yet goes on to criticize the MDC alliance, regarding which there is no evidence that we have breached the privacy of people, and starts making all of these adverse comments. And in that, ironically, he displays his bias.
But your report is clear in the public domain. If you go to
This isn't our report.
but you're using the report for
Yes, but it's
argument.
not our report.
But
Okay.
it's
Okay,
the
all right.
basis of your arguments.
Okay, let's move on to the next, the last issue on the voters' roll. What will the MDC alliance do if the voters' roll issue is not resolved?
Well, it's not so much what the MDC alliance will do. The so-called new dispensation under President Mnangagwa, aligned with the biased ZEC, is determined to try and convince the international community that this is a free, fair, credible and legal process. If they allow the process to go in with an obviously flawed voters' roll, it is their own credibility that they crave so much for, which is going to be undermined. So it's not so much what the NDC alliance is going to do. It's how ZEC is going to convince the international community that we are going into an election with a credible voters' roll.
But what do you mean when you say you will not go to an election if the issue of the voters' roll is not?
We have not said, if you listen to
I think
Nelson
Chamisa said no
today,
election. What did you say
when he
today?
said that we will not boycott the election, but that the election, as we understand an election to be, will not happen.
So what does that mean?
Well, obviously, one can see countrywide the momentum that the MDC Alliance and Nelson Chamisa as an individual is gaining. Thousands of people countrywide. It is unprecedented. In my 18 years of being in the MDC, I have never seen crowds like this. So if ZANU-PF and this plethora of what I call one person and their dog parties go into an election without the millions of people clearly who are supporting the MDC alliance, they are not going to get that credibility they crave. And to that extent, there can be no credible election that will take place.
So why should Zimbabweans listening right now and with what you're saying go to an election that is rigged? Why should they
Well, that
participate in an
is
election
the
that
problem,
is
and
rigged?
that is why this is a very serious issue for our nation. This shouldn't be seen as a partisan issue. What we say, I've sat here this evening, as calmly as I can, explained how perhaps 5-6 provisions, legal provisions, have been brazenly and systematically breached by ZEC and other parties. We all need a credible election. We all need whoever wins that election to have legitimacy. And so, therefore, it is in all our interests not to dismiss these things and say, oh, well, the presidential ballot breaches the law, but it's water under the bridge. It's a very serious issue. And we can't just dismiss it.
Now, Dr. Moyo, on the issue of the ballot papers, why is it ZEC did not involve the other parties in the design and also in the printing of the ballot papers?
Thank you very much for giving us a chance to explain that. I chair what is called the Multi-Party Liaison Committee, which is a committee that brings together political parties to try and bring a consensus on various issues. Immediately after a nomination was done and after verification was completed of qualifying candidates. I convened a meeting with the multi-party liaison committee. One of the key things that I wanted to discuss with the political parties was the issue of the design of the ballot paper. That meeting that was held in HICC was disrupted. I was personally abused by political parties myself until the meeting was disrupted after about 4 or so hours. But you may all know that the Commission needed to move on to print the ballot because printing a ballot requires quite some time, because we needed to be done in terms of printing 14 days before election, so that we can accommodate the postal ballots. Then we went on to design the ballot and printed the ballot. But we moved on to say, whereas the whole function in terms of printing of the ballot is given to the Commission, we'll try to be accommodative, and we invited political parties to join us at Fidelity Printers, where we're doing the presidential ballot. I took them there myself. They went in, and then they were able to view from the printing gallery the actual printing process. Thereafter, we gave them, each person who was there, the paper in which the ballot is being printed, because there were certain allegations that there is what is called chromatography, where if you vote for Dev, it will move to Qhubani. So we said, go and certify yourself that there's no chromatography, and also certify yourself that the printing is being done in Zimbabwe and not in another country. So if all political parties are to be truthful to the people of Zimbabwe, they did go to see printing, they did go to get a copy of the ballot itself. One wonders why then they will mobilize their supporters to come out and say that we didn't go to Fidelity, we didn't get a copy of the paper in which the ballot is going to be printed. The Commission went that far, despite the fact that constitutionally, the law, says we have the sole mandate of doing that. But we are trying as much as possible to accommodate it.
Okay, all right. So, Mr. Porter, what can you say about
Okay, so let me go back a bit regarding the independence of the Commission. The Commission, in terms of Section 235 of the Constitution, is meant to be independent, and it must not, the wording says, show fear, favour or prejudice towards anyone. We've got the background of the chair of the Commissioner, and I dispute when that photograph was taken, because there are clear pictures of her having had that staff on after her appointment, which is on the 1st of February this year. But that's not where it ends. She went to Russia in March, not with all representatives of political parties, but with Chris Mutsvangwa, who's President Mnangagwa's special advisor. That is fact. There's social media. She accepted. Go and Google it, their press reports. And she goes to Russia. Now, if you look at Russia's involvement in elections, we saw yesterday Putin and Trump, and a big complaint of Americans against Trump was because of Russian interference in the American election. Read up on the 2004 Ukrainian election. And this isn't fantasy. The Russians were involved in the 2004 Ukrainian election in subverting the ballot in the 2004 election. The Russian foreign minister has been there. Russians are investing in the platinum sector. They have huge interests in that. So that is the background to this. So when we come, and I don't want to comment about what happened at that viewing incident. I wasn't there. It's hearsay. I can't dispute what Dr. Moyo says. But what I can speak...
But the issue that he's saying is that the opposition had the chance to
Well, yeah,
and
but let's come to the actual ballot. We didn't know what the presidential ballot was going to look like. In fact, when a copy came out a few weeks ago, Dr. Moyo himself on social media said this 2-page thing was incorrect, that wasn't the final thing. But now we see that it is. And when we go to the law, and allow me to go through the law, we start off with the Constitution. The Constitution, section 239, subsection G, says, correctly, that ZEC has the right to design the ballot. But they have designed the ballot. If you look at the regulations that were published, the regulations say, these regulations state that the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission has, with the approval of the Minister, made the following regulations. So these are the regulations that they've made in terms of the Constitution. And they are very, very precise when it comes to the presidential ballot. It talks about horizontal segments, and that there are only 4 vertical segments in the ballot. It's very clear. And then if one looks at Form V10, it is clear it is meant to be on 1 page, not 2 pages or across a page. And so it is a clear violation. But then it goes further than that. If the members of the Commission have a basic knowledge of maths, they'll know that if you divide 23, you can't get an even number, can you? But you can get 12 and 11. That's the logical way. But what do? They put 14 on one side and 9 on the other. What does that do?
Is to say that Jeff knows very well. I think he's going to observe elections when he was a member of parliament. That's about when delegations go as a team consisting of people who are in the commission, security, and also other institutions that can be there. When you are out there, nothing stops you from meeting as Zimbabweans and interacting and probably taking a picture. But I really want to go deep with that, because for me that's really immaterial. I want to go and say that the design of the ballot requires that the Commission does it in alphabetical order, which the Commission has done. And on why the Commission has put 2 columns in its desire to ensure that we do the cost-effective measure of design of the ballot. The Commission had to use that paper, because if we had gone on with the candidates in one straight line, it meant that we're going to have 23 candidates in one line, and therefore we're going to use an A2 paper, an A3 paper. And when you do the actual casting of the ballot, when you fold that paper to put in the aperture of the ballot box, we are going to have situations and problems of inability to be able to put there, and also immediate more ballot papers, to more ballot boxes to accommodate the number of ballot papers that are made on the A3. But I want to also emphasize that look, I don't see any advantage that is there by candidates being put by side to side, because when Zimbabweans go out and vote, they know who they are voting for. They go to choose their particular candidate on the basis of the symbol and on the basis of the name. So it's something to me that is not really material. What is material to me is the issue that Jeff also talked about initially, regarding whether this election is being done in an environment of where you have fair coverage in the public media of the all political parties that are contesting. I want to say that in my view, there has been improvement in terms of coverage that is there in the public media for the political parties that are contesting this election. We have seen for the first time the coverage of live coverage of launch of the manifestos of the 2 political parties that are major in his party, and also that of Dr. Moyo. To me, those are improvements. But also, let's
but is it enough? This is the issue that David Colt was saying.
Well, I think
media is still.
No. You see, my view is that there is lots of improvement in terms of coverage of the opposition political parties compared from where we were before. But so we also need to understand that when you go to an election, you go to an election with the government in place and also the incumbent being president. So people must separate the coverage that one gets in his or her capacity as the president, or when ministers get coverage when they do government duties and when they do political party campaigns. I do agree with Dave that more can still be done in terms of improvement of the process. But surely, on a reflection of what has been happening before, there's been a marked improvement. And also, look, we've also had many new players that have come in place. in terms of private media that are giving coverage to these other parties.
Okay, I'm running out of time. So because I know that there are a few people who have sent messages via WhatsApp, and also a few people who are trying to call in. Someone has just asked, what's the hashtag for this discussion? It's hashtag ZimDecides2018. And let me just read one WhatsApp message that is coming, and it's for Dr. Moyo. It says, police officers raised alarm over postal voting at Rose Camp, where officers were allegedly forced to vote in front of their commanders. Your chairperson said you went and spoke with some police officers. What did they say? And do you think there should be an investigation?
I went there personally. At the time that I arrived, I found police officers queuing, receiving their ballot papers or envelopes from their commanders, because these ballot are sent to the stations. They were queuing to receive them and then going out to vote in their privacy. And I'm satisfied that when that happened, it was being done properly in terms of the requirements of postal voting itself.
Okay, are you happy with that response,
No,
Mr. Colt?
no, not at all. You know, the problem with having a relatively short program like this is that you can't explain to listeners just how badly
I've just
the
been
ZEC was
told by
breached.
the way that we can go up to 2040, so
Wonderful.
we have a little bit of time.
That's wonderful. So I just want to come back to a couple of points quickly before I address the postal ballot. Firstly, this excuse given by Dr. Moyo that they're saving money and that the best way was to put it across the page. He ignores what happens in South Africa. In 2014, South Africa had 29 political parties, and they put it on one page because the law there as well says alphabetical. And that is why it's the combination of the alphabet and the form that they prescribe. So they have broken the law, and they've done it in a way that isn't for cost-saving purposes. It is done to prejudice one and favour another. I wish I had more time to speak about access to the media. Let me just say this, that even if there has been an improvement, it's been, and if you're marking it as if you would mark an exam paper, they've probably gone from 5% to perhaps 30%, but it's still a fail. It is still a fail and doesn't meet the credibility test. But let me turn to the postal ballots, because there are misconceptions about this, and I need to explain to you listeners, because there are particular provisions which relate to what is defined in the Electoral Act as discipline forces, namely the police, the army, the prison services. And let me underline this, that unlike Australia, where you have to vote, no person has to vote in this time. It is a right. It is a discretion that a person has to decide whether to vote or not. But Section 73 says that if a police officer, for example, decides to exercise that right to vote, he can apply for a postal ballot, and it can be done collectively. It's got to go through the commanding officer. And there's a logical reason for that, because only the commanding officer will know whether that policeman in fact is going to be away from his station. So that's why it goes collectively to ZEC. And that was done, which is in compliance with law. But then it breaks down, because in Section 74 there is the obligation of ZEC, and this is where ZEC fails, to address a personal letter, a bit like a sweetheart letter, to each voter. It gets addressed to the address given by that police officer, his personal address. And the envelope goes to him, and he then receives it through the post, himself or herself, and then in the privacy of his or her home, at a time and place of that person's choosing, they vote, and then they have another envelope to return to ZEC. So the first question that has to be asked is, how did all these envelopes end up together at Ross Camp? And how was it that the commanding officers summoned the police to come? That could only have been ZEC's fault in sending those envelopes. Then Section 75 says that once you voted, you individually return it. There's no such thing as a collective return. We see these boxes where the police officers were forced to put their ballots in. And a further breach, we have evidence on affidavit statement that the envelopes, the policemen were forced to have their names on the envelopes, which totally breaches the security, I beg your pardon, the secrecy of the vote. And so we see a profound breach of Section 74 and 75, not so much by the police, but by ZEC. And one other point. This is what happened at Ross Camp because some brave police officer blew the whistle. But what has happened at all the military barracks across the country, where nobody got in to see what happened to the process? And that potentially is about 30 to 40,000 votes. And let me make this point in closing on this. We need to consider the cumulative effect of all of these different measures. Dr. Moyo says, oh, the presidential ballot doesn't affect people. Most people know where they want to vote. But it does affect some people. Some illiterate people will find it confusing to go down. It may only be 3,000 or 4,000 voters, but it's 3,000 or 4,000 voters who wouldn't otherwise vote for Emerson Mnangagwa. And then when you add to that the police and the army who are forced to vote in this illegal frame, when you add into that 76,000 odd people who strangely have a surname that no one else has, and you add it to all the other things, the cumulative effect of that points to a serious breach of our constitution and electoral law.
So how do you respond to people who say the opposition created this problem when it proposed to remove the special votes and pushed for postal votes?
Well, a postal vote is a right. So it's not that the law is wrong. The law is actually right. The problem is that the law has not been complied with. The opposition, the MDC, supported this law. We don't dispute that. We're just saying the law has been broken and ZEC is responsible for that breach with very serious consequences.
Okay, let me read another WhatsApp message. It says, by law, all postal ballots ought to have been received by the Chief Elections Officer by noon today. And this is from Dr. Alex Magaisa. Yes. And yet the ZEC chairperson claimed yesterday that the council ballots were still being printed. ZEC has failed postal voters. Your reaction to this, sir?
I think I want to go quickly and correct what David said, if I come to what Dr. Alex said. That there are no 40,000 people in the postal ballot. There are 7,000. Of those 7,000 or so, only 4,000 are police officers. And those police officers voted not in the presence of their commanders, as far as I know.
I stand corrected on that.
Yeah, but look, I think he does raise issues that are important in terms of improvement of our processes for the future regarding uniformed forces on how we can deal with that so that they can get the followed individually. But it is also untrue that these police officers were made to write their names on the ballot papers. It's also an issue of social media. Just so that
on the envelope.
No, on the envelope. No, they were not writing on the envelope. I did make a verification of that myself. But look, we are in a situation of transition from special ballots to the current situation. And probably in the process there could have been issues of mix-up or some individuals that were doing things not necessarily in full compliance with the regulations. There is a platform for engagement in that. This Friday I am going to be meeting all political parties in my capacity as chair of the multi-party liaison committees to deal with some of the issues. But regarding the issue of postal ballots, I think Dave knows very well that it is a substitute now because his party made an application that they should all be nullified and pending before the electoral court in Manicaland. So I don't want to get deeper into those issues. What my good brother and comrade Alex said, that the postal ballot should have been received, but he said yes, that is the requirement of the law, and the commission has received the postal ballot. We have not received anything to the contrary regarding implementation of the requirement of the law. I know the argument regarding what time they should arrive, whether it's midday, commission says midday, then there were debates regarding whether someone can be punished for a ballot paper that comes in late because of constant inconveniences that are not his own. Look, I'm a layman if I'm to defer to what Colt and other lawyers call us, and I don't want to get deeper into the but to say that I think you have really complied as fairly as you can.
Before you come in, Mr. Colt, so how many ballot papers are going to be printed all in all for the general election?
The presidential ballots, they are supposed to be 5.69 something plus 10%. That's the required margin that they allow. The exact number of voters that are registered plus 10% on top of that.
And how far will be the polling booths from the polling officers, the political parties, agents, and other observers? What are the regulations for that?
No, we have polling booths that are inside normal classrooms or normal tents, and the polling officers are also right inside there. The exact measurement I'm not too sure, but it's the standard measurements that we have used over here. Except that this time the Commission has made administrative changes in terms of how the polling booths will look like. Instead of you going around at the back, the Commission has now made the booths face the observers and the election officials, so that they can be more transparent to ensure that any voters that could have been intimidated take pictures of how they voted. Are free to do so without fear of intimidation.
Mr. Porter.
When I hear with respect to Dr. Moyo, him talking about intimidation, and we know last week, for example, that ZEC, which is a highly credible NGO, has released a report of a survey that they've done in the rural areas, indicating that 81% of the people interviewed in their survey areas said that they had been visited by soldiers in the rural areas and threatened. I just laugh, and ZEC have had this report for a week and they've said nothing about it. And yet now they are so concerned about voters being intimidated. This is yet another. I'm shocked to hear Dr. Moyo say this this evening. I'd read this newspaper report. I couldn't believe that it could be true. The Constitution, the Electoral Act, says that a vote is secret. That overrides every other consideration. When a voter goes into the booth, there can be no compulsion for that person to take a photograph of their ballot. And where is the precedent of that? In the 2008 election, 2013 election, where are the allegations that this was a widespread practice? It is simply, with respect to him, nonsense. It is designed, ironically, to intimidate voters. A rural voter now goes in, they know that it's a BVR system. The voters' booth is now open to policemen, to other election officials, that these many of them old, perhaps timid rural voters now have to vote in that context. And so this is an outrage that Dr. Moyo is speaking about, and it's a further indication of a ZEC which is not committed to complying with the Constitution and the electoral law.
Well, it is very important to protect, voters. What Dave is saying really is being proven to be incorrect, because we have seen situations in the past elections where there are some ballot papers that have been posted on social media after people voted. In fact, as we speak now, last week, after the incidences at the house camp, we did see people that posted how they voted in the Rose camp, and we also saw people that they began to post results of what was claimed to be counting of ballots, which of course was untrue. So in order to satisfy ourselves that voters vote without any coercion, that there is no political party that forces people to say, go and take pictures of how you are voting and send them to us or show us how you voted yourself. Let people vote in private, in their booths, and that is new. We've seen it happen in many other countries that seen election observation happening. It's part of our transparency. And then also you say I also want to go and say, I think given this, party alliance, also need to give credit to where the commission has done well. We have done very well in terms of construction of the field that put us role, despite the difficult conditions of non-availability of resources, late release of resources. I think we need to be applauded for that. But not only that, we also want to make them understand that in this whole electoral process, it is unfair for his party to use the commission as a campaign agenda and not use policies as the campaign agenda. You should not mark the referee. You should actually mark the ball. What you failed to achieve in Parliament cannot be achieved via the back door. If the electoral act that you're referring to, was changed in a manner and way that wants you to be present during the printing of the ballot paper in terms of distribution and so on, we'll have followed it to the letter. But you see, our quandary is whenever we do certain things and try to extend, our inclusivity to go beyond the law. The next thing is we are sued by institutions that are closer to you. When we say, okay, let's move according to the law, you say no, go outside the law. When we deviate, you sue us. We have so many frivolous, cases that we have been facing at the commission that have made our job very difficult and that have been very costly because of a desire to be inclusive.
Okay, so let me ask you this last question, and this is another message we received from WhatsApp, and it's for you, Dr. Moyo. It says, you were once on the opposition side, fighting in the trenches with the likes of David Colt. What do you think of your concerns at that time? Were they unfounded? If you were facing ZEC today, would you raise any concerns? And do you really think your colleagues are raising frivolous issues?
I am a freedom fighter myself. I was in the trenches with Dave and others. And some that came later on into the...
So now they're a freedom fighter as well.
Yes, yeah, and I do acknowledge that you do. And because I believe in fairness, I got into the commission, on the basis of my capacity through interviews that were done by Parliament, and I made them. And in my execution of duties at the commission, I've made sure that I stand for fairness, I stand for the law, I stand for the Constitution. But coming from the background of where I was before, I do understand that some people get offended by the way we follow the law, the way sometimes we become abrasive, the way that tempers rise. But that's how election business happens. We're talking about statecraft. We're talking about how people want to run institutions of power. And I do understand the emotions, but I do engage, my former colleagues. Some of them I engage them privately and try to ensure that we try and find a consensus, we try and find a common position. Like I said, that this Friday we're going to be having a meeting of all political parties with a view and hope of trying to find a consensus, of saying, look, the factual position that the issue of printing of the ballot is water under the bridge. It's done. Therefore, how then do we move in terms of administrative measures, of inclusivity, of bringing people on board in terms of probable issues that can be done regarding maybe overseeing distribution and so on. I've always said to them that there's need for creativity to look at things that are practical, chase things that can be implemented. Let's not go for the abstract things that cannot be implemented, because there are so many stakeholders that have interest in this election. It is not just one opposition. We're talking about 23 presidential candidates and 55 political parties and 5.7 million Zimbabweans that are registered. Most of them that have confidence in ZEC, and in their confidence, they are quiet about it.
Okay, so and finally, for you, Mr. Coulthard, it's another message saying, you say the election has been rigged, so why should people go and vote in an election? I'd asked that earlier on. And the listener goes to say, the system is rigged, voters were in shambles, but why is the opposition contesting? Isn't the MDC alliance building up for disputing the elections or spoiling for a fight?
Okay. What we have to do, you have two stark choices as a political party or as a citizen of the country. You either commit yourself to the rule of law and to non-violence and working within the system, or you commit yourself to a path of violence and breaking the law. And the MDC alliance has always been committed to the former. We've simply been, and I want to come to this fundamental point. Dr. Moyo says that the MDC alliance has been complaining about the fact that ZEC is implementing the law. That's, with respect to him, nonsense. Our precise complaint is that the law has been broken. Just briefly to go back, the law says no commissioner. I'm reading from the Act now. Our listeners can't see. No commissioner shall knowingly wear any article of clothing that is reasonably likely to be associated with a political party. Section 11(3), subsection C. That's how this commission started out. We hoped that it would be better, that it wouldn't be partisan, that it would genuinely be independent. But we've seen a series of measures taken by ZEC, breaking the law with the postal ballots, with the voters' roll, and now with the presidential ballot, breaking the law, the clear dictates of the law. And Dr. Moyo says, oh, well, it's water under the bridge. But breaking the law, demonstrating that the wearing of that scarf wasn't just symbolic in early February. It indicated a fundamental bias, a determination for nominally independent ZEC to benefit one party against the will of the people, and that is our complaint.
Okay, and unfortunately, I see this listener keeps sending the same message, so I need to ask David Colt out on this. She says, we have seen a trend of misogyny coming out in regards to the issues of the integrity of the chairperson of ZEC and other female candidates. What do you have to say about these comments, particularly when we want to push for women to go into decision-making position? And why hasn't the MDC alliance condemned this kind of behavior?
Well, I condemn misogyny. I've been married for 35 years. I love my wife. I love my mother and my daughters. I have a deep appreciation for women. And I don't think anyone can level that against me. My criticism, my personal criticism of the chair, has nothing to do with her gender. It has everything to do with her lack of professionalism and the breaches of the law. So this has got nothing to do with misogyny. But I condemn, let me say this, I've seen some of the posts against the commissioner using foul language, which is totally unacceptable. And I need to also say that I've seen threats against some commissioners. What we need are debates like this, where we, in a rational way, look at the law. But when we delve down into those dark, murky depths of misogyny and making threats against commissioners, is the day that we totally undermine our democratic process. But we hope that ZEC and the chair will listen seriously. I've been a lawyer in this country for 35 years. I've represented many political parties long before I became a political actor myself. And I've never had the lack of confidence that I have now in an electoral commission as I do with this one.
Well, a final word.
The final word for me is that the commission remains open to engagement with all political stakeholders to ensure that our election becomes free and credible. And on that note, we're taking on board serious issues being raised by political players, and we'll call a meeting of the multi-party liaison committees on Friday, so that these people can raise issues in a formal platform that is provided for in terms of the Electoral Act, and then we're able to take those issues to a full commission meeting that is there next week on Monday, and see which ones are practically implementable and which ones are not. Want to make it known to all Zimbabweans that the commission is not taking any sides in this particular election. It is impressive, and wants all Zimbabweans to move on board, wants to have an election that is acceptable, and for it to be acceptable, we need all players to be on board. And this debate for us with Dev that we believe has been,
sending signals of misinformation to the public. It becomes very important for him to explain his position as we have done, and also for the Commission to explain his position to the public. But clearly, I have no doubt that all commissioners, starting from the chairperson and everyone else, are people of high integrity that are following the law to the letter, and where we are seen to be lacking, we are available for purposes of anyone who can highlight to us, and we see how we can deal with that. That is how our democracy can grow. That is how we can have a Zimbabwe that is impressive, a Zimbabwe which made an election that was accepted for stakeholders.
Final word, Mr. Colt.
No, I'd just like to thank Dr. Moyo. He challenged me. I accepted it. And thank you for coming all the way to Bulawayo with your flu. And thank you, Skies Metro. We need more of this in Zimbabwe because this will take us forward.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Indeed.
And that's all we have on the ZEC-sponsored Making Elections Make Sense in partnership with Violet Gonda. Thank you very much for listening. Good night.
Skies Metro FM, our time is 11 minutes to 9. This is Skies Metro FM. Thank you for tuning in. Siyahamba mdlalo omuhle kumsakazo wakho inkalakatha esabantu. So many people were complaining becela ukuthi maybe ngakukhulunywa ngesindebele kumbe any other language ekhona esintu, but unfortunately we were hosting Mr. David Colt. Bekumele azwe yonke into esikhuluma ngayo so that angacabanga ukuthi sipotana ngale. Thank you so much Violet Gonda ubehamba lathi plans untila. Siyahamba lapha sikwesabantu Skies Metro FM ungayindawo kusazoba lit injalo.
Making elections make sense.
You guys, can we get pictures? Can we get pictures? And it was all there. There was no slide.